You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Wednesday, April 14th. We have some stories. It's kind of like story time with Uncle Craig today.
Yes, I like it. I might just name this episode that.
Or story time with Chaplain Mueller. We're going to share some great stories with you here in just a little bit of our chaplains who are serving so faithfully, so diligently around the globe, and oftentimes in many places we don't know anything about. So we're thankful to have some quality time with Chaplain Craig Mueller. Share those stories in just a moment. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for your support of the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us in studio this morning, the Reverend Craig Mueller. He's a director of ministry to the Armed Forces. Chaplain Mueller, thanks so much for being our guest here on the Coffee Hour this morning.
Oh, it's great to be here with you guys.
Truly, to actually be here, yes. To be in person. Thank you so much for coming to the studio and spending some time with us and sharing with us the story of LCMS chaplains who serve in ministry to the Armed Forces. To paint a picture for us, where are LCMS chaplains serving today? And I know, obviously, we don't know exactly where they are, but to paint a picture for us, help us understand where they're serving.
Sure, to not sound too cliche, all over the world. But it is true. You know, our numbers, we probably have about 68 on active duty. We have a few reserve chaplains who are mobilized. But when you look at the map, they're all over the world. We have obviously all the service branches. So we have Air Force, Navy, Army, and then, of course, the Navy also covers the Coast Guard and the Marine Corps. So we've got them scattered pretty much everywhere. It's kind of unique right now. We actually have 3 carriers, which are not a lot of them in the Navy, who have Missouri Synod chaplains on them. Mm-hmm. So we have the USS Nimitz has one of our chaplains. The USS Ronald Reagan out of Japan has actually 2 of our chaplains. And then we have the USS Eisenhower has one of our chaplains, one of our former co-workers, Bomberger. Yeah. So Rachel Bomberger's husband, Ken, is on the USS Eisenhower.
Still hear him in the mornings here. He was so gracious and put in so many hours recording Oratio for us here on KFUO.
He has that great radio voice.
Yes. So we still get to hear him. Okay, before I hand it off to Sarah, I have a personal question. Who's on the Nimitz?
The Nimitz is Malley.
Aha.
Oh, Chaplain Valley.
Yes.
So my nephew is on the Nimitz.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we definitely have to get them connected then because, well, of course, they had that long, you probably heard.
Yes.
That's part of my sea stories that
can't wait to
I'm
hear
saving for later.
Yeah.
And then also on the Reagan, my brother's on the Reagan. And then also we have another chaplain there who's with the Air Wing, which flies onto the ship before they deploy. And he's Chaplain Engel from Concordia, Missouri. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's really a small world, but they're all over the world, I guess.
So now I'm curious, do the duties of a chaplain on board a ship, are they different than duties out deployed elsewhere in the world? Is it different in any way when you're with that group of service members on board a ship?
That's a good question because, while the core things are all the same, obviously, Word and Sacrament ministry, the environment is different on a ship. You sometimes get a lot of collateral duties. Other things like, of course, with COVID, that's part of my sea stories too. You'll love those. They used to be kind of like the Liberty tour director, to set up things when they go to a port, other than going to a bar or other places that most of our sailors might want to go to. So they kind of do the cultural things, and they could be part of the PAO, public affairs, so there's a lot of collateral duties because, you're on a ship, you got to work as a team and just do what you got to do. But obviously the primary mission is still provide divine services, Bible studies, counseling, and all that. So I think the thing on a ship, which is really unique and is really, you do have a captive audience. You are their pastor. Of course, the carriers that I mentioned, it's not a small congregation, with the air dead on board, it could be up to 5,000-6,000 to get sailors. So that's a lot of sailors. And there's probably 3 ships crew chaplains, and then you get the air. They come with a chaplain. So when all the planes and jets come on board, they bring their chaplain with them. So that helps a little bit with the pastoral care. But that's kind of what it is. If the Marines, it's a lot of it in the field, but you really pretty much are your unit's chaplain. You get that relationship developed.
Every time before we talk, I spend time, I go back to the Ministry of Armed Forces Facebook page and I watch the videos. We need to share those too, because there's so many good stories on there. And I know you have some stories to share about our chaplains. What are the challenges that they're facing today? I know you mentioned some challenges. What are those stories of challenges that our chaplains have been facing recently?
Sure. Some of our sea stories coming from a Navy chaplain, but I'll tell the stories from all of our branches. But, it's in some ways it's not any different than the challenges that our pastors have had and any church worker during the COVID, including you all here, trying to conduct business as, to do your job, take care of people. But I think the challenge and we just mentioned those ship, and I think what they're more unique is we just kind of hinted at that, I can't remember the exact day, but it was almost a total year that the Nimitz was underway without any port visits. So you can imagine being on the ship. I mean, there were a couple times, I think, that they, refueled or whatever, they could get on the dock or do whatever, but they couldn't do anything. And, most people, so the challenge is morale. Most people join the Navy to see the world, or these kids get the opportunity.
On a ship.
And you got to see a lot of water,
man.
And then they, of course, had to wear masks on the ship too. Yeah. So wherever they were. So for, it's just kind of it's a challenge, obviously. So the chaplains try to do the best they can to counsel. And as you can imagine, with that age group, again, 18 to 25, there's a lot of counseling, a lot of sadness and disappointment. And, throughout the whole military too, the suicidal ideations are up. But I'm sure, I don't think we know yet, but I think our country, we're going to find some staggering statistics of what this lockdown and COVID did to people who don't have that lifeline of Jesus. So that was probably the biggest challenge because then I think, poor Chaplain Bomberger, I hope he doesn't get too mad at me. He got connections, but, I got him to join, worked on him to sign up and do this great thing. And as soon as he gets there and moved there, he gets underway, first deployment. And then they come back and they get underway. Second 2 deployments in 2 years is unheard of, really. It's not that often with the carrier. So he's underway again, a second time. So I haven't really talked to him in person, so if he's still...
You're avoiding him?
If he isn't... but no, that, just right into the fire. And of course, he's also with the wing. So he's not really part of the ship's crew. He goes with the jets when they go on the ship. But of course, they deploy just as much. They just sometimes fly off, and join it, so they can land and all that kind of stuff. But so I'm looking forward to hearing some of his sea stories when he gets back, getting that opportunity to go from parish life and, right into the fire of underway in a huge ship. Yeah. And then I know in our other carrier, Reagan, in Japan, so you also got the overseas issue. So that's other morale challenge, because a lot of these kids join and want to see other parts of the world, not necessarily by deployments, but just by being stationed in Japan and Spain, all over the world. But of course, as we know, the whole world's locked down. So they didn't get to do all those exciting things too. You kind of had to, so it's not really different in the civilian world. I mean, but it's just a little added stress because they have to continue. I mean, they can't telework on the ship, or for the operational forces, they still have to go do their job. And so that could be challenging of doing all that.
Yeah. You've mentioned Word and Sacrament Ministry and counseling. What are some of the needs, if there are other needs of the service members that the chaplains are serving?
Do you mean other needs of
the military? What are some of the other needs that these chaplains meet when they're deployed?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. They really are. They're the safety valve, the confidant, the senior, I say senior because even as a chaplain, by the time they finish their MDiv and years of parish, they're usually kind of the older group on the ship. So they do provide a lot of mentoring, a lot of coaching, a lot of just talking through, people's, again, thinking 18 to 25, I know you all both are very involved in youth work and that kind of thing. There's a lot of things going on in their life, and they need a lot of mentoring and counseling and, some good encouragement. So that's pretty much what they do. And then what's one of the traditions, too, and I know I'm kind of heavily focusing on the Navy, so I might hear from my friends from the other services, but one of the unique
We've
things...
We've got time to talk about them, too.
Yeah, we will. We'll get to them. We have lots of stories. But one of the coolest things that we still are able to do is on a ship underway, they do evening prayer, every night before taps. So it's kind of like, I don't know how to be sentimental about it. Some people get excited about it in a negative way. Well, why are we still doing prayer, on the public? But at the same time, many still just appreciate that at the end of the day, although their day doesn't really stop because they're on shift work. But for some of them, that's just the tradition in the Navy that they are able to offer a prayer. It's kind of a calming presence and a peace of God to know that they're not alone. So I think they really are just that approachable person that any sailor on the ship, regardless of their rank, can come to. And again, I'll switch it to, it's the same thing with all the service branches, whether it's soldier, sailor, airman, Coast Guardsman, or Marine. That relationship with their chaplain is so critical because that'll make or break it. They'll respect you as an officer and this is your job, but they can tell, they can tell if you're genuine or not and if you really do care for them. And if you're out there with them, that they know that anytime they have an issue, they can come and talk to you.
We have more stories to share with Chaplain Craig Mueller here on the Coffee Hour. We're talking about ministry to the armed forces. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
On this Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, KFUO Radio thanks our day sponsors, Dale and Sandy Decker of St. Louis, Missouri. Dale and Sandy made a gift to KFUO Radio in honor of Dale as they celebrate his 61st birthday today. They are thankful to the Lord for his many blessings throughout the years. Thank you, Dale and Sandy Decker, for helping us share the gospel and for being today's KFUO day sponsors.
Welcome to A Peep Behind the Scenes. In 1878, this book quickly sold over 2.5 million copies. Now, over 100 years later, it comes to life as a powerful audio drama. The story of the lost.
There's nobody loves me, and nobody never did.
And the Good Shepherd who brings them home.
For God so loved the world.
On the next Lamplighter Theatre.
Saturday mornings at 11 on Worldwide KFUO.
The USA is the third largest mission field in the world, and church planting is one of the most effective means of making new disciples, new missions to new people and new places. Get ready to plow the fields.
Check out the Mission Field USA podcast produced by the LCMS Office of National Mission. You can find it at kfuo.org or anywhere you get your podcasts. Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
We are talking with Chaplain Craig Mueller. He's Director of Ministry to the Armed Forces for the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, sharing great stories of our servicemen and women, in particular our chaplains who serve them. How do chaplains serve the families of, how do they serve military families?
Yeah, that's a very important part, obviously. It's kind of the phrase says is, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. But of course, as we know, that could also be daddy now and all the, it's a multi-force, but it's very important. That is part of the chaplain's role, is to take care of the service member and their families. And so they have to be careful to make sure that they're taken care of. So if a chaplain is one of those deploying, the others back in the garrison or at home kind of absorb that and take care of the families because the other chaplain went with them, with their service member. And so somebody's got to take care of the family. So they try to do things, to make it as normal as possible, with, Sunday school programs, vacation Bible schools, Bible studies, youth, a typical thing you would see in a parish kind of environment. And of course, we are kind of, from Missouri Synod Chaplains, we really try to encourage our Missouri Synod families to get plugged into a congregation, LCMS congregation in their area, because that is so critical to have that support when their husband or wife is deployed, that they got that LCMS congregation that's kind of their family.
So I want to get to some stories, and I don't want to run out of time. You've mentioned you have several stories. What are some of the stories that you've heard from our service members who have been deployed in the last year?
I think a lot of it is just kind of interesting in the sense that they're not really exciting, in the sense that they were out and got to see this, this cool thing and things like that. But I think the interesting story to me is just, and maybe that's just because I'm a retired chaplain and pastor, but how, because of all this stress, their ministry is actually stronger in the sense that these kids are more open to talking, and I mean, they have a more captive audience. They really do. And so the exciting thing for them is to just hear and learn all about their families, and as much as information as they share. But I think some of the other exciting things are maybe more from our chaplains' wives, that when their husbands are deployed and all of a sudden they have to move their whole household by themselves, and they kind of share with us their exciting learning. So far, they again haven't been angry with
the dramatic pauses in between.
I know. As I'm waiting for that phone call that says, "What did you get me into?" I don't remember this. I tried to warn you about that, but But the military family is really good. They do. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, you're not alone, regardless of where you come from. There are kinds of resources and things that help in the stories of the funny things that you hear about. Now all of a sudden I'm writing the checkbook and you're not. One of my favorite stories, which is not uncommon, is when a service member, and particularly what I deal with is chaplains, will deploy, and they were the ones, their years in the parish, that did all the taxes and all the funding, now I got to deploy, I got to give all that to my wife, and I don't want to overwhelm her. And then when he comes back, she's got it all under control. And it's even better than it was before. And they have more in savings, and it's like, now he kind of feels like, well, what?
Whoops.
Am I even needed anymore? It's like, no, you just let her do it.
The trash still needs to be taken out.
Exactly.
So don't worry.
There's still some
stuff. The trash will always need to be taken out.
I'm sure it'll take some time, and that is part of our reintegration. It seems like, but sometimes they do come back and just feel, okay, you did so well without me. Okay, this broke down or whatever. And so how do I reintegrate back into the family? Or she did all the discipline, and now dad's home and he wants to reacquaint, and so he's less likely to, the kids know that they can get away with a little more because dad doesn't want to, and mom steps in and says, nope.
Dad doesn't want to be the bad guy.
Changed. Yeah, we're going to get him back into the family. But it's just a lot of fun. It really is. And I think that's one of the things I always try to tell my pastors that I'm talking to, as well as the church at large, is that these men and women who sacrifice so much to serve our nation, but they're stretching them. They're reaching out into new areas they didn't think they would. Some have never seen the ocean. Some have never flown in an airplane, because you kind of grew up in the Midwest. And now you're out there and having a great time learning about the different cultures and getting to know many people of different, economic, social backgrounds that you would never run into otherwise, because it really is a kind of a melting pot in the military. And so they just have all kinds of great stories of meeting new friends and going out on adventures and that kind of stuff. It's just great.
Unless it was 2020, and then you just see lots of water.
Yes. Or your room, like everybody else.
That's true. Your bunk. You had mentioned, especially on bases for families, having opportunity, chaplains serving on those bases, and encouraging the families to connect with the local congregation, but also providing those services to the families there. And you mentioned like Sunday school or vacation Bible school, and I think we have two, maybe 3 DREs now in the LCMS. They're not chaplains, but they work alongside chaplains.
Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
That's an important part for our listeners to know about. That we have it's called the Director of Religious Education, and the Army has several of those, but we have 2 Missouri Synod, and both of them were our DCEs. Well, the other one also became a chaplain, got his, MDiv, but, Martha Strong, which me mention her name, who's now at Fort Leonard Wood. We've been in touch with her, and she went from being a DC right into this world, and it's just a great opportunity. It's challenging because you really are for all faith groups there, but she has that opportunity that God provides to get, materials, good, and again, Christ-centered materials for the Protestant group. I know they can't see my air quotes, but the Protestant group, that because it's all, so that's stuff that she can influence and reach out. And of course, she's got some great stories. We're going to try to actually work with communications department from the Missouri Synod to highlight those of how she did things virtually. With like all kinds of programs, anything from a Valentine's Day party, connecting the spouses together, all the stuff. And again, probably nothing different than our parish workers do, but it's just a different environment, being with the Army.
What about resources for veterans? I know like Operation Barnabas or things like that. Talk about those resources for people who have come back.
Yeah, that's important. I think every one of our congregations, so all of you out in KFUO land, if your church isn't doing something to reach out to veterans, we have a program called Operation Barnabas, which is basically just a network. There's not a lot of taskings or anything like. We're not top down. It really just is a community of believers of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod who intentionally reach out to veterans of all ages. Obviously our World War II generation is slowly dying off. I mean, that's, and we're moving to the Korean and then Vietnam, but we have a lot of our, Iraqi or War on Terror veterans that are now in our parishes. And what is just kind of an outreach to intentionally reach out to them, and let them know that we appreciate their service to God and country and that they are welcome in the Church of God, because a soldier too can be saved, as Luther said. You did your job vocationally and served with honor and dignity, because sometimes they're just kind of on the fringes. They're not really sure. They were gone, whether they served 4 years or 20. They haven't really got plugged back into their church. So it's a program to encourage our congregations to just stop and look, how can we reach out to veterans in our church as well as our community, in the area?
I have 2 more things I want to get to, but before that, I want to, any more stories before we jump to those, or did you cover all your stories?
Asking a sailor about sea stories.
We could be here all day.
Yes,
is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Any other stories before we jump to, I want to talk about Armed Forces Day and also if someone's interested in becoming a chaplain as well.
Well, I think maybe just one quick story that kind of ties in with that is, at the end of the day, I've been in this position now 7 years, coming off of active duty as a Navy chaplain, but serving with the Marines the last 10 years. I have not yet had one chaplain or his wife in those 7 years of bringing on, can't remember the exact total, 20, 30 pastors have said, get me out of here. It's been once it's a little fear and trepidation. It does stretch you, get you out of your comfort zone. But once they get engaged in this ministry, they really do see it's exciting. So I would say my excitement about this position is just the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few, just like our church at large. But this is a unique, targeted opportunity to bring the gospel to the men and women who serve in our military. And
one way to talk about this and to let people know about this is Armed Forces Sunday, and that's coming up. Is that next month?
No, it's in May. Yep. I had to think
What month is it?
What month is it? Yes.
Yeah,
understood.
I didn't write that day. I should know. It's the 16th, I think, or around there. I'll have to look that up. Check our website. But Armed Forces Sunday is one of the days that we do set aside and put out materials so you can educate your congregation and our folks of how we reach out to the men and women who serve our military. And then, of course, we have Memorial Day also in May, which is a very somber day. Sometimes veterans get a little quirky about the differences. So it is important to know what Veterans Day is about, what Armed Forces Day is about, and what Memorial Day is about. They're unique things. So it's just being conscious of that is helpful. But yeah, just to see some way we could support this ministry.
Absolutely. So backing up a little bit, how does one become a chaplain? If you could sum it up in a minute or two, what's the path to becoming a chaplain? If, say, there's a parish pastor who's thinking, that might be something I'd like to do.
Thank you. Good question, because it does matter where they're coming from. As a parish pastor, they can come in as long as they're under age 42, because it is a young person's game. And then also physically, you have to pass the physical tests, I guess, or physical of military. But other than that, they are all hiring. Air Force, Navy, and Army is really desperate for chaplains. And as I always joke, they don't care what sort of faith group, because they're a government, they're just hiring. We got to fill 30 spots. So I always say we need to put Missouri Synod people into that spot, pastors, because they will get through there and they will make an impact. And the other one is if there are any seminarians listening or people are going to the seminary, there's another program for a route that way, and they can contact us. And that's a great way of finding out what this ministry is like. But it really is you have a passion for this, we'll work with you. Just contact me and we'll let you know.
Very good. How do we find that information? How do we find Ministry of the Armed Forces information?
The best place is probably just the biggest picture is Armed Forces at LCMS on our webpage. But you could also, and I'm going to give you my phone number, text me at 571-234-0073. That's 571-234-0073. And I'd love to take your call.
Is your phone blowing up now with all those text messages?
I left it in my office.
If you go to lcms.org, you can find Ministry to the Armed Forces on there as well. Is there a specific, is lcms.org/
It's a /Armed Forces.
Armed Forces. lcms.org/Armed Forces. Thank you so much for being our guest on the Coffee Hour today, sharing wonderful stories with us. And God bless all of our chaplains and all those, our servicemen and servicewomen as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for KFUO for all their support.
You're listening to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.